Hello, all. Today, we're going to talk about demand forecasting. So, I'm sure by now everyone has read in the text about demand forecasting, but what is demand forecasting? So, demand forecasting is a value of future demand that also considers the current inventory levels and orders that are in place in the system that need to be secured, that overall is needed for production for the organization. So the balance of supply and demand within the supply chain of an organization, it allows for the business to conduct activities that will effectively generate value through the core activities of the enterprise, and that's why demand forecasting is so critical because it supports that. So within this activity, um, it's a sub-activity that forecasts the demand for the products needed to produce the goods and or the services that the customers of the organization needs and wants. So, kind of at the center of this is the sales planning and production planning aspect. And sales planning is then going to give information to the production planning that's going to help determine what we need. And then from that, you also have to consider on the supply side the capacity planning, and on the demand side you have to understand the forecast or demand management, going with the customer's needs, what the customer wants, what the market wants. And then to support the sales and production planning, there's material management involved, and then your supply partners and also your internal factories, your internal production. So, why is demand forecasting important? Demand forecasting is important because it enables the organization to have proper supply to meet the demands of the consumer marketplace, and it facilitates revenue and profit growth. It facilitates the business being able to bring value back for its stakeholders. So it also protects the financial interest of the organization. So invest in inventory that will protect and grow profit while minimizing the investment in non-value generating inventory. You want to buy inventory that generates revenue. So that's why understanding the demand feeds your orders. So, why is this critical? I like to give an example of, um, like if you look at a coat, demand forecasting is critical because you think, oh, it's a coat. But if you're making that coat, you could have the lining of the jacket, if it's like an imitation fur, that could come from Thailand. Um, the liner, maybe it's cotton. It could come from China. They're the world's largest producer of cotton garments. The zippers could come from Japan. Japan, XYZ is the name of the company. They're one of the biggest zipper producers in the world. Germany is a huge fastener country, so maybe they're making the snaps for your coat. And then Taiwan is maybe making the external shell. So if you look at that, you have, five countries. So if you have pieces coming in to make your coat from five different countries, obviously you want to make sure that you're getting your forecast correctly. So, some considerations in demand forecasting. So what we want to consider is what are our current inventory levels and established organizational inventory plans and capital restraints. We want to be able to understand the customer demand, how it's projected, how we need to support and feed that. And then, seasonal trends. I mean, that's part of the customer demand, but is it something that's, lawn furniture? Are we selling a lot of it in April, May, June? So then obviously we need to be making that in December, January, February, and not buying inventory to support production of patio furniture. We don't need to be buying inventory for that in June, July, and August. And then, are there any internal environmental factors, such as what's the production schedule? What's the warehouse space? What's the philosophy of the organization as far as how to allocate the use of the space in the warehouse? And what's the organizational temperature for the acceptance of risk? So some of the benefits, so when you really have a strong demand forecasting function in your organization, you're going to see some benefits, such as the balancing of your inventory investment so that the organization can meet all of the consumer demand while not allocating cash to the non-needed materials. You're really going to optimize your inventory. Your inventory is really going to work for you to generate profit. You're also going to provide your organization what is needed to meet the customer demand, and you're going to realize revenue through fulfillment of that customer demand. And you can also improve your supplier relationships. Something to consider, and a lot of people don't consider this, is that um, a really robust demand forecasting plan can actually improve your supplier relationships because if you're able to give your supplier accurate and advanced orders, then they're able really to plan for you. But if you're one of those customers that drops in and says, "Hey, I know that it's an 8 week lead time, and but 7 weeks from now I need a million of these," um, that's going to strain your supplier relationship, and it's oftentimes going to be very hard to get what you want out of your supplier because you're putting them in a difficult spot time and time again. So, when you look at demand forecasting, I think this is one of the supply chain topics that really translates to everyday life. Because, like, let's look at it through the lens of your grocery shopping. So, we need to establish a production plan, a production schedule, what we're going to make. Okay, well, that's just like planning your weekly menu at your home. What are you going to have? So you go to the organization, say, what do we need to make this week? What's the consumer demanding? You go to your spouse, you go to your children, you go to your parents, whatever your home situation is. Who wants to eat what this week? What do you want for dinner? Anything special? So then we assess our current inventory levels, which is just like checking your cabinets. So let's say that I want to make spaghetti this week, and I go to my cabinets. I've got spaghetti sauce, um, but I don't have noodles, and I don't have ground beef. Okay, I need to buy those two so we can have our production of spaghetti. And then you socialize your plan. You go back and you take it to your stakeholders. Does this look right? Are we spending our money on inventory that is going to turn, that's going to generate value for the company or your family, or is it going to rot on the shelf and we're going to throw it away? And then stabilizing supply. So we're looking, and right now during coronavirus, are there any constraints? Okay, well, we know that this grocery store is having trouble getting lettuce, but we know this grocery store can get lettuce. So maybe we have to go to two different grocery stores. And then we enact our plan. We make it happen. We go shopping. So demand forecasting really can apply to your real world. Um, so also when we're looking at making some decisions for demand forecasting, we understand how does it impact organizational goals, and also how does it impact financial resources. So you're looking at something that has maybe a low impact on your financial goals and a high impact on your financial resources. That's going to have a high risk to your demand forecasting. That's going to be things that don't generate a lot of revenue. That's going to be things that sit on the shelf for a long time and that cost you a lot of money. That's like if you're a car dealer and you have so many spots on your lot. Um, and let's say you are a dealer that sells Chevys and Cadillacs in the GM family, then maybe you have two Cadillacs and 10 Chevys because the Chevys are going to sell more often. The Cadillacs aren't going to because they cost a little more. So the Chevy would kind of be a high impact on your organizational goal and a low impact on your financial resources. Whereas the Cadillac could be a low impact on your organizational goals and a high impact on your financial resources. So some of the methods of demand forecasting, quantitative, which is based on opinion and intuition, and or qualitative is based on opinion and intuition, and quantitative, which uses a mathematical model and historical data to make your forecast. So when you look at quantitative, which as we go back, quantitative, it's using that mathematical model and historical data to make your forecast. There's two main sub models within quantitative. There's a time series forecasting, and that is based on the assumption that the future is an extension of the past. So, hey, we sold 1,000, you know, bottles of Coke in my grocery store every month. But every year we realize 5% growth. So you know what? I'm going to sell 1,050 bottles next month, and then I'm going to sell 5% more every month. And we have this growth. So we can do some time series forecasting or some cause and effect forecasting. So this assumes one or more major factors, independent variables that can predict future demand. So perfect example of this is the packaged ice industry. I actually delivered ice in college, and we knew that on the average on the average day, a driver that takes out a truck that held 10 pallets of ice would maybe sell 8.5 to 10 pallets of ice every day. Well, July 3rd, that same driver might sell 20 pallets of ice, and July 4th, that same driver might sell 30 pallets of ice. So that is some cause and effect forecasting. You look at that, and the cause is there's a holiday. People are off work. People are celebrating. The effect is they're going to buy more ice. Qualitative forecasting is a little different. As we said, it's kind of based on intuition and opinion. Um, and it's generally used when data is limited, data is unavailable, or it's not currently relevant. Where forecasting depends on skill and experience of the forecaster and any information that you do have available. So, um, this is often the case maybe in startups or smaller organizations that don't have the data management tools, don't have the historical context that a larger organization does. So there's four qualitative models that really are used. So there's the jury of executive opinion, there's the Delphi method, there's the Salesforce composite, and there's a consumer survey. So in the jury of executive opinion, internal stakeholders that have a detailed and robust knowledge of the contributing factors collaborate to develop a forecast based upon a knowledge of the market, and you want to understand both your supply and your consumer market. So this may be a case to where right now the consumer demand is low and the supply is high. But we know 2 months from now, consumer demand is going to be high and the supply is low. So maybe do we buy in advance and we try to level load? Um, Competitors. So understanding who are our competitors, which companies are they, what are their place in the industrial segment? Are we one of the best? Are we one of the worst? Are we in the middle? Understanding that, understanding our position as far as how that position reacts to consumer demand and availability of supply. Also, understanding the current business environment. What internal and external factors are there? So, a great example in 2017, the Trump administration put forth some tariffs on stainless steel out of China. Well, then, if you saw that that was coming down the road, you could look and say, okay, low cost steel from Asia is going to be tariffed to where it's similarly priced to to steel produced in America. So what is that going to do? That's going to give American steel manufacturers much more confidence to raise their price. So if you know that this legislation is going to go intact, then what you would have wanted to do right away is you would want to hedge and lock in your pricing maybe for the next year, maybe for the next 2 years at a lower rate with the American steel manufacturers. So this process can be it can streamline the decision making. It can lead to quicker decisions as long as the organization buys into your the people that are making your forecast and the methodology that's being used. And it can falter if the stakeholders are making a decision in the vacuum, if they're not consulting with the subject matter experts, if they're not conducting with the data inputters. If the VP of supply chain, the VP of customer service, get together in a room and say, this is what we're going to do, and they don't consult anyone else, the jury of executive opinion can really falter. So the Delphi method. So this inputs are gathered via survey of internal and external experts. It does not have to be only internal. It does not have to be only external. It does not have to be both. It can be any model that fits your organization. So this takes place over multiple rounds with considerations of future events and consumption by the organization against the forecast. Experts involved in the survey are anonymous, and this really allows for an impartial bias to grow and allows for a little more integrity of the response. So the responses are compiled and shared. So this might be, we might have 10 people and I send out how many of these 4 parts are we going to sell. Everyone puts in their expectations. It comes back, we look at it, and then we just put these 10 people expect these sales on these parts, and we send it out. And then our panel of experts in the Delphi method will then evaluate it, and they'll adjust and resubmit. And we do this again and again and again until we really have kind of hammered in on what this committee or what this panel agrees on for our forecast. This is common in a lot of smaller organizations that have a sales force that's really in tune with their customers. The Salesforce composite. So this utilizes an external consultant or a service provider. So some of these firms may utilize data from internal sales professionals, and they utilize market data and they provide you a forecast based on the market data. Um, and this market data is going to provide an input that will translate the consumer needs into demand and anticipated sales for your organization. By doing this, you're able to collate the anticipated sales of each segment of your business into one summarized number that you use for planning. And really, this is going to assume that the sales force, that your internal sales force or your consultant has intimate knowledge of the territories, the customers, and the industry. If that is not the case, there are definitely holes in this system, and it can cause more damage than good if it's not, I guess, intimately knowledgeable of your market and your customers. And then the customer survey. So this is a forecast that's generated from data received directly from your customer. So customer data provides projection of anticipated future purchasing wants and needs. The customer data points also provide market evaluation of current and future products. This I've often been asked to participate in these from some of my suppliers as they're planning their capacity, as they're planning their resources. If you are a B2B company, so that's business to business, so often a B2C company like a Walmart or a Best Buy or a Target, this isn't really going to work for them. Whereas a B2B, you can really leverage your trusted customer relationships, your strategic partnerships to get this data. So that is kind of demand planning in a nutshell. I know I ran through that pretty quickly, but if you have any questions on demand planning, please reach out to me, and we can definitely talk. It's a topic that fascinates me. Um, it's not as interesting to everyone as it is to me, but please let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you want to chat about it. As always, feel free to email me on anything. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week.